Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli, the computer guy, here for the Daily Blob, where we say consent. Consent. Have you heard of this word? Consent. I don't know. Is that Greek or something? That doesn't really sound Italian. No, I've never heard of this word. Consent. Anyways, I think this is an interesting story today to be looking at artificial intelligence and then asking where liability begins and ends with AI. So what we're talking about now is essentially artificial intelligence listening in on conversations and basically being able to pull out information. What I find curious about this is when I had my computer repair shop, one of the things we sold were digital surveillance systems. And in Maryland, what was curious is you could put video cameras basically anywhere. You could put them anywhere other than toilets and you were fine. But audio was a complete and utter pain in the ass. So audio actually had to be double-sided consent. Essentially, anybody who could be recorded has to consent to being recorded. In different states, the consent for recording is different. So in some states, there's single-party consent. So essentially, if I decide I want a conversation recorded, I can turn on a recorder without telling you, and as long as I consent to it, because I turned on the recorder, it's all good, right? You can have things like that. But in Maryland, you had to have two-party consent on it. Both parties had to know that they are being recorded. And so it was curious, especially with surveillance systems. And it was, even in public areas, right? Even in, like when we put the surveillance systems in gas stations and those types of places, right? We had to be very cautious about where we put in microphones. Well, the fascinating thing now in the modern world of artificial intelligence, right, is the big thing that these founders and these CEOs is pushing is that AI is somehow fundamentally different than all this other technology, right? AI is not a microphone or a recording device. It's an intelligence, right? I talked about this in one of the previous videos. Anthropic is actually looking at AI well-being. If you put in negative requests into Claude has distress. These jackasses are literally trying to say AI shows distress. But the issue then becomes, right, you have these syphilitic jackasses that are trying to manipulate words in order they can sell more product. And then you have the normal American legal system that, you know, depending on the day, may or may not give a crap about the stuff that these folks are spewing. And so this becomes interesting, especially with things like Zoom communications, right? So I see this a lot when we do Silicon Dojo sessions. So we do fireside chats and classes and that type of thing, right? People will ask for like AI synopsises or whatever we're talking about, right? So they actually click a button and everybody sees this little message that says an AI thing is being taken and I can click OK. Well, one of the curious things is what happens if people start using artificial intelligence systems or other systems like this and they do not get consent from everybody on the call, and especially in a remote work scenario. One of the things I think a lot of the CTOs and the CEOs aren't thinking about is that regulations and laws are different in different states. That was one of the things back with Monica Lewinsky, is when Monica Lewinsky was talking to whoever the hell it was, right? One of them was in Maryland. I do believe the other one was in Virginia. And that was one of the issues that came up. Is Monica Lewinsky was in Maryland. And so in Maryland, you had to have two-party consent for recording. And the other woman, whoever she was, I think was in Virginia, and it was only one person consent for recording. And so there was actually a legal discussion about this, about whether the recording was even legal because, you know, it was over interstate. And that's something to consider nowadays, right? If you have 20 employees spread all over the country, what is the legal and regulatory environment that all those different employees are in if you start deploying things like AI and recording and all that kind of stuff? And what additional hoops do you have to jump through in order to verify that everybody has consented, whether they realize they consented or not? That's its own deal, right? So that might be the type of thing. Like, this is why lawyers are important when you have tech companies, is it might be whenever you hire a new employee, you have them sign a dotted line that says all digital communications that are done on company systems or whatever else either may or will be recorded, blase, 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 and you agree to this. Right? You sign off on that, and then that's your consent going forward. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but you do that type of thing. I think these are some of the things that you kind of have to consider now because there are so many of these AI systems being put in. You've got remote work going on. What happens from a legal or regulatory standpoint? So this is Otter.ai. I think this is coming from Gizmodo. Otter.ai sued for allegedly recording work calls without consent. A California suit claims the app is recording private conversations and using them to train its AI. Otter.ai, the maker of AI-powered transcription and note-taking tools, is facing a class action lawsuit in California over alleged privacy violations. The suit, filed Friday in federal court, claims that Otter.ai is recording private conversations without obtaining consent from all the call's participants and then uses those recordings to train its AI. According to the complaint, Brewer doesn't have an Otter account, but joined a Zoom meeting in February where the company's Otter note-taker software was running. He says he had no idea the service would capture and store his data or that the call would be used to train Otter's speech recognition and machine learning models. The lawsuit specifically targets Otter Note-Taker, the company's tool that records and transcribes Zoom, Google Meet, and Microsoft Teams calls in real time. Normally, if someone other than an Otter with an Otter account joins a virtual meeting, the software asks the host for permission to record the call, but it doesn't automatically check with everyone else in the call. The lawsuit also claims that if the host has integrated Otter with their Zoom, Google Meet, or Microsoft Teams account, an Otter note-taker bot can slip into the meeting without getting explicit consent from anyone on the call, not even the host. Quote, crucially, Otter does not obtain prior consent, express or otherwise, of persons who attend meetings where the Otter note-taker is enabled prior to Otter recording, accessing, reading, and learning the contents of conversations between Otter account holders and other meeting participants, says the complaint. According to the suit, this violates state and federal wiretap and privacy laws. It also alleges that users' conversations are being used to train Otter's AI models for the, quote, financial benefit of the company. Otter.ai was founded in 2016 as AI Sense and has since grown to more than 25 million users and surpassed 100 million in annual recurring revenue. But even before this lawsuit, users were already voicing concerns. In one case last year, an AI researcher said Otter recorded a Zoom call with investors and later sent him a transcript that included intimate, confidential details discussed after he had already left the meeting. Hey, why do we need the NSA to wiretap our systems? We'll just wiretap ourselves. So that's an interesting thing. Again, something to consider if you're using these kind of AI transcriptions deals. So imagine, right, you're doing this meeting with investors, right? You have a startup company, you're doing the meeting with the investors. The investors want to make sure information is taken down or whatever. So they start the Otter note taker. Everybody agrees to it, right? So you do your conversation and then you drop off. And then the investors, they then talk amongst themselves about how they really feel about you. But here's the thing. If Otter is continuing to go in the background, all of that information is going to be collected. And depending on how you set up the whole notification routine, at the end of it, basically the startup founder that was being talked about might get the whole transcript of everything that was said during the entire meeting. And that might be a wee bit of a disaster. This is one of those things that you have to kind of consider from a risk management standpoint. Again, in the modern world, when we start thinking about technology and risk management and security, so many times when we think about security, it's firewalls and encryption and that type of thing. An important thing to consider now, though, is what are the security implications of so many of these services that folks are using, and can it release just a tremendous amount of information accidentally? And so how do you train your users to make sure that there isn't a problem? What workflow or systems do you have, right? Maybe you say, okay, for when we're going to be meeting with new startups or whatever, we are going to use Zoom for that. But for any internal communications, if we want to do internal video communications, maybe we'll use Teams instead. right? So basically the idea is that you can have extensions and things added to Zoom, and those are the Zoom extensions, right? But then when you go do an internal conversation, you go to maybe, let's say, Microsoft Teams, and you don't have any extensions installed to make sure that there's a separation there. So when you stop having the conversation with a startup company, then everybody flips over to a different platform to make sure there's no data leakage, that type of deal. This is kind of like the weird things a lot of folks are going to have to be thinking about. And also, do you want to allow Otter to be used? That type of deal. This is also where I've talked about before with the whole idea of shadow AI, right? So shadow IT is the idea of what happens when employees at your company simply decide to swipe a credit card to spin up IT services. So your IT department doesn't even know these services exist. Again, with AI, what happens when they swipe the credit card in order to get AI functionality and the IT department doesn't even know that it exists? These are some of those things to start thinking about here. Let's see here. Politico also reported that its China correspondent reportedly discovered that Otter shares user data with third parties after using the service during an interview with a Uyghur activist. So that's the other thing too. What happens with the data? As I've talked about before, especially when you use APIs or anything, right? You're sending all of this information to that provider. Do you fully understand what that means? And I would argue most people do not. So what do you think about this? What do you think about Otter being sued for recording calls without everybody's consent? Do you think this is a legitimate lawsuit? Do you think it's a stupid lawsuit but brings up some legitimate stuff? Or do you just think it's stupid? Put your thoughts down below. Give us a thumbs up, give us a thumbs down. Say I'm amazing, say I'm horrible. Just do it down in the comment section. And with that, see y'all later.